Let's go ahead and get into it. So here we are in February. This is our first official webinar of 2026 for Colorado nonprofits on coloradogives.org. So we're so excited you're here. Today, as I mentioned, we're talking about endowments. And by we, I mean Tim, which you'll get to meet here in a sec. So for today, we're talking future-proofing your nonprofit. So the power and perks of endowments. As you guys settle in, I'd love for you to update your Zoom name. So name and then nonprofit, just so everybody gets a feel for the different wonderful nonprofits that are joining us today. So if you can update your Zoom name to reflect your name and your nonprofit, that would be awesome. And then just to loosen things up for today, because it's our first time back in the new year, we'd love to hear what's the best thing that happened to you already this February? So it doesn't have to be long-winded, just want to hear some happy things that happened to you. So go ahead and use that Zoom chat. Would love to hear what good things are happening to you already this month. And thanks in advance for sharing. I'll say my good thing is watching my son learn to snowboard. He's doing awesome. He's the tiniest one out there. So that's my good thing this month. Amazing. Oh, 30-second wedding anniversary, booked a trip to Florida, wedding anniversaries. This is great, guys. Olympics, that is a great thing. I have been watching. Thank you guys for sharing. It just makes, I hope everybody, but especially and selfishly us smile. All right. If you haven't already, go ahead and update your Zoom name and let's get started. So I've already been talking, but I also want to introduce you to Tim Zester. He's going to be your main point of contact for anything endowment related. He's the Colorado Gives Foundation's endowment partner. Hi, Tim. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you, Jordan. Thanks for having me, especially this being the first webinar of the year. I hope it's more like a strong first anchor leg of a relay, but it's okay if it's more like spring preseason football or spring training baseball, and you're getting all of the kinks, the hitches out early. That's okay too.
Yes, awesome. That's what we're here for. And then, of course, my name is Jordan. I'm the nonprofit success manager for coloradogives.org. And we did share both of our scheduling links here. So if you ever want to just chat about coloradogives.org, Colorado Gives Day, or, of course, about endowments and ways you can grow your nonprofit's funds, we're both available to chat. All right. And so just a quick reference to Colorado Gives Foundation, who we are before we jump into the details of endowments. So we are a community foundation that is rather unique in that we focus both on statewide initiatives, uh, fundraising through coloradogives.org, donor services, giving funds, endowments, group giving. And then we also are focused on a thriving Jeffco. Tim, tell us a little bit more about what the Colorado Gives Foundation does in Jeffco.
Yeah, absolutely. Statewide work is certainly a big part of what we do, as Jordan said. And in fact, I'll pause there and just say I was reading some of the comments. Tara Thompson stole mine. Tara, good to see you again. I saw Tara recently. The Winter Olympians from Colorado, super proud of all of them. I heard that Colorado has the most Winter Olympians on Team USA. So yes, the work we do across the state, very great and a big part of what we do. We also possess the vision that all of Jefferson County is thriving. So beyond engaging the community in the ways that are listed here, kind of on the right side, we also have 6 areas in which we award community impact grants. And those are housing, health, and connected neighborhoods this year in 2026. And then we'll return to another round of grant cycles for food security, early childhood education, and workforce development in 2027. So a lot of great work statewide and some specific to Jefferson County.
Amazing. Does everybody see what's going on my screen? My Outlook's like, yes, we're going to open right now. So apologies for that. Let's just move on. I don't know quite how to fix that. So I may ask Katie to share her screen while I resolve that. Katie, are you available to share?
Yes, give me just one moment.
Welcome back, everybody.
I'm reading through some of these other ones. I did love the halftime show. The other one I was going to say, I'm also excited at, I'm also excited at potentially some snow in the high country. So, I guess keeping with my Winter Olympics theme.
Okay,
So
it was resolved. I've gotten control of my Outlook. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So, thank you very much,
Sorry,
Tim, for
Jordan. Do you want me to stop sharing so that you can reshare?
sure, that's fine.
Okay.
We're just a sharing kind of bunch, guys. Okie dokie, here we are. All right. Sorry if anybody got a little whiplash from that. Can everybody see my screen?
you're looking good to me.
It's not a webinar without a little bit of fun.
Right.
But really today we want to talk about 4 key learning outcomes. And so we want to be really specific about what you guys are going to get from this today. So we want to talk about endowments, what they are, and then also what they aren't. So we can eliminate some preconceived notions that I think some people have when we're chatting with them. We also want to talk about how your organization can integrate them into fundraising and your digital messaging, and then some ways like actual copy that you can leverage to talk about endowments with your different segments of your audience. And then Tim will take us through some practical stewardship and plan giving strategies so you can take that away from today. Some quick webinar notes. So this webinar, of course, is being recorded, and the slides I'm recording, they're going to be emailed to anybody who's RSVP'd for this webinar afterwards, and then it's also posted on the nonprofit resources page. All accounts, names, businesses, events, and data, they're fictional. Any resemblance to real persons or events, it's coincidental. Now, today we do have some amazing scenarios that Tim's going to go over of our actual partners, which is great. Please stay muted, which you all are, so thank you. And use that Zoom chat. We love it. And if we don't get to any of the questions to answer them today, we go through that so we can follow up with you. And then, of course, related to coloradogives.org, use our support team. They're all year, Monday through Friday. So email is the best way to get a hold of us. All right. Now I'm going to hand it over to Tim to talk about what endowments are
Mhm.
and what they're not.
Yeah, thanks again, Jordan. As Jordan just mentioned, we're going to do a brief kind of little recap of Endowment 101. What is an endowment? What is it not? How does it work? Is it right? How do we know if it's right for us? Then we'll move on to the rest of the agenda that Jordan just outlined. I will say we did a webinar last March that really looked a little bit more at the Endowment 101 piece. About 10 to 15 minutes of today will overlap and recap that webinar. So if you were here for that, hopefully that's the right amount of refresher for you. If you were not with us last March, that is also okay. I think this is the right amount, but feel free to go back and check out that webinar anytime. Katie will throw the link to that webinar into the chat. So with that in mind, let's recap what is an endowment on the next slide here. So an endowment, long-term fund invested for the current and future needs of your organization. It's designed for reliable income. It is generally held in perpetuity, and only a portion of the fund is spent each year. Great, Tim, you just read the slide. So instead, let's do an example. Let's say you work at a school and a donor comes to you and says, I want to give you $100,000 and you could award scholarships from this $100,000. You sort of have a couple of options of what to do. The first option is you say, wow, thank you so much. I'm going to take this $100,000. I am going to create 25 scholarships of $4,000 each. I'm going to give that out to 25 students. And after 1 year, you've awarded all 25 scholarships. 25 students are happy. That's fantastic impact. And you're out of money. So that's one option. The other option is the endowment option, and that's where you take the $100,000 and you endow the fund, you endow the gift, so that you will give out one scholarship for $4,000. And because your $100,000 gift is now invested, it will grow. So the next year, you actually can give out $4,100. The year after that, $4,200. And over time, two things happen. The first is that soon you will have given out more money than the initial gift was. You'll give out more than $100,000. The second is that the balance of your fund won't ever hit zero. In fact, it'll go the opposite direction, and you might one day double the amount that's in your fund, triple your amount. This is how Harvard got $50 billion in their endowment, as they've been doing this for a long time. So by limiting how much you give out in a year, you can both grow your fund and give out more than the total gift was originally worth. Does that part make sense? Some of you might be tracking with me. Others, it might be a little bit confusing. So please throw out some questions into the chat if you need some more explanation. I will get to those questions on the mechanics of endowments shortly. We have a couple other slides I think that will help explain this a little bit more. So what is an endowment? Okay, so we already talked about this permanent fund that supports you forever. We're going to teach you actually not to say the word forever. Jordan and I will get to some words that work in a little bit. But yeah, only a portion of the fund is spent each year. I mentioned 4% because that is what we recommend, and because the investment returns are higher than 4%, so the fund continues to grow. Another thing about endowments, they absolutely can be restricted. We gave the example of a scholarship. They can be restricted to a certain program or just for general operating. We have 140 plus partners that have endowment funds with us at Colorado Gives Foundation. I would say more than 100 of them have endowments just for their general operating. A lot of times individuals, families, businesses, people who want to leave a legacy and support something that lasts, you're going to hear us say that a lot today. They are the ones that can help you establish endowments. And then usually endowments are managed professionally to maximize growth, minimize your risk, alleviate the burden on your nonprofit. You can easily outsource this, which most nonprofits choose to do. What endowments are not? They are not a rainy day fund. And hopefully you know what I'm talking about when I say this. Some people think, oh, I'll start an endowment so that if anything bad happens to my organization, I have this big pool of money to pull out and to patch things up. Well, that's not actually what an endowment is. That's okay. That's what cash reserves are for, or maybe more flexible investments. And when we help nonprofits think about if they're ready to start an endowment, one of the first questions we ask is, how do you feel about your cash reserves? Do you feel like you have a safety net? Do you fluctuate wildly by ending some years in the red and some years in the black? So we're going to talk about endowments being attractive to planned giving donors and legacy donors. And a part of that is because they know the money is designed to last in perpetuity. So yeah, that is why it's important for organizations to have reserves. This is not necessarily one of them. So another one, not complicated to start. If you can begin small and grow it over time. We're going to share a couple of stories about how nonprofits did that. They started with a fund and then grew it. Not a substitute for your annual fundraising. In fact, we will show you some tactics that will actually help you strategically engage the correct donors at the right times of year so your annual fundraising doesn't suffer. And actually, one day the endowment is working to attract gifts and add revenue, not detract in any way. And then only big nonprofits? No, I used to think this all the time. But any organization can start an endowment. Colorado Gives Foundation, like I said, out of our 140 different endowment partners, some of them have hundreds of people on their staff. They do work across the country and across the globe. Some of them are completely volunteer run. So staff size doesn't matter. It's more about if this fits your mission and your strategic plan. So one more summary slide, and then we'll get to some of these questions. The initial capital. So your logo here, your nonprofit here. The initial capital, the seed money, begins to begin an endowment. That starts with the nonprofit. That starts with you. And that's precisely what we're going to talk about for the majority of the webinar. How can you engage your donors to gain those dollars? The initial capital comes from the nonprofit. Then you find a partner like Colorado Gives Foundation. There's other great community foundations as well who can help you grow the fund through investments, through fundraising resources, and many, like us, even have grant funding to help you grow the endowment further. Then annual distributions are made back to the nonprofit every year, creating predictable, sustainable revenue. Okay, I'll pause. I thought I saw some questions sort of pop up, so let's get to some of those.
Okay, the first question we had come in is, what is the difference between an endowment and a donor restricted fund, or just a regular invested account? And then some context. In a previous role, my team was penalized by our oversight authority for incorrectly referring to a donor restricted fund as an endowment, but we never really learned what the issue was because the process and result were the same. We only withdrew a specific amount each year, increasing relative to the interest gained.
Yeah, great question. I'm not going to comment too much on the penalty part, especially if you were doing things correctly. But great question between an endowment and there's a lot of different terms. We use a term long-term designated fund. I've heard donor designated fund. This question, a donor. Sorry, I'm not in the chat, but yeah. So there's a couple of different differences that I'll just kind of talk about with, let's say, a long-term or a designated fund and an endowment. The endowment really is designed so that you're only pulling a set percentage out every year. Not to get too much into the weeds, there's what we call agency endowments versus donor endowments. But anything with the word endowment, we're only pulling out a set percent each year. Could be 4%, could be 5%. We write that in a fund agreement. Could be 3%. With a designated fund, oftentimes we still have a set distribution percentage, but there are easier ways around that. So a donor could maybe say, I want to give more out of this particular year. For example, like a donor advised fund, a DAF, a donor could give any amount out of that. They could give 100% if they want. So the biggest difference, I would say, between an endowment and any of these designated funds is really the set distribution or spending policy is what the legal jargon, I guess, would be, that's set and written into the fund, and how easy it is to kind of get around that if you ever needed more.
And JD, that's a great question. If you want to talk more about that or about donor restricted funds, let's do it. So
Yeah.
we do have opportunities for you to connect with us after this.
Yeah.
Katie, were there any more? I saw a couple more that might be good to cover.
Yes. The next one is, how do foundations view endowments when it comes to program expenditures versus fundraising versus general/administrative costs? For example, might it jeopardize receiving a grant, etc.?
Love it. Let me just give the short answer to this real quick, because we'll touch on it a little bit more at the very end, and maybe even how this could be beneficial for talking to your board about endowments. I have had conversations with our current VP of community engagement here, Savane Nathan. He's a fantastic guy, as well as other funders from other foundations. Because I wonder the same thing. Hey, if I have an endowment, it looks like I'm sitting on all this money. I hope I'm understanding the question correctly. It looks like I'm sitting on all this money. Will a foundation give me a grant when I have these reserves? And their answer is, we love to see, especially endowments, because one, they signal that you're going to be around. You've already made the commitment to be doing this work for years to come. Two, you're actually pretty, what's the right word? Disciplined. You're pretty disciplined instead of just, we'll talk about of maybe what happened, different scenarios of how much to endow and things like that. But you're disciplined with saying, we want to create predictable, sustainable revenue. It's actually very attractive to funders. I can't speak for every type of family foundation. Maybe family foundations with different boards that give out money differently might say, oh, we want to support. But yeah, for a lot of community foundations, a lot of larger public foundations, they like seeing endowments because they're betting on long-term sustainable organizations. Did I understand that question right? I hope so.
One last question here. Does Colorado Gives also offer gift funds or fully expendable funds, which can serve as rainy day funds?
Yeah, absolutely. We do, and it's that's kind of our kind of solution is either a long-term designated fund, or some people have even their cash reserves with us. So yeah, that's an option, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Really, really smart to be thinking about that, just like we think about our own finances, right? Like, I probably wouldn't start a 401k unless I at least had a savings account. And the same thing, right? Like, I probably wouldn't start an endowment unless I felt pretty good with my cash reserves. So we certainly can help there. A lot of institutions can help there. But great question, and I think you're on the right path to be asking it.
Any other
Okay.
questions that came up, or should we move on and get into the next
Yeah,
topic?
there's lots of time at the end for questions. That's kind of just that was some clarity on what is an endowment. Just a couple more slides, and I'll turn it back over to Jordan. I kind of just mentioned this a little bit, so I want to give you 3 scenarios based on a question that I actually get a lot, which is, hey. Um, all right, the question is, how much should we be putting in an endowment if we get a gift of like $1 million? So the answer is, why don't we just spend it? Why don't we just spend it all? And I say the answer is you absolutely can. If you get an unexpected gift, a large gift, you absolutely could spend all of that at once. Now, I want to say there's one caution that I would offer and one opportunity that I would offer. The caution is, and I think we just kind of touched on this a little bit. The caution is I've seen a lot of organizations use large, unexpected gifts to grow programs that they can't sustain. So think about if you personally inherited $1 million from Aunt Mildred, and that sounds great, right? Like, and you take that money and you buy a new house. You use all $1 million and buy a new house. Well, that's really great, except with the bigger house, you now owe more on property taxes. Your heating and electric bills go up. Instead of one garage door, you have 2 garage doors. So you have to call the garage door maintenance guy more often. And if I sound bitter about this, it's because I called the garage door maintenance guy last week. And your costs go up. You didn't save any of that $1 million from Aunt Mildred for annual expenses. It could be the exact same with programs as well. Like I said, we talked about scholarship example. If you give all $100,000 in scholarships out in a year, what happens to those students in year 2, in year 3? Are you going to say, well, sorry, we don't have any more scholarships for you. So that's the caution of spending it all at once. Here's the opportunity, which is in this slide. Here are three scenarios that I've given you on choices that you could make if you ever find yourself in the really, really fun position of receiving an unexpected or large gift. We just used the example of $1 million. Choice one is the red bar. That is if you spend it all at once, you invest all the money directly into your programs. Choice two is the green bar. You spend half. You spend $500,000 in your programs right away, and then you endow the other half to create more sustainable revenue. And choice three is if you're in a really, really great position and you can endow the whole thing. My disclaimer, none of these returns are guaranteed, but they all are based on averaged historical returns. So we are getting these numbers from real circumstances. We're just kind of averaging them out. The graph on the left here shows you how much money goes to the organization and its programs and when that money is received. So you can see that red choice, it makes the most immediate impact. Right away, you get the $1 million, you use the $1 million. But once it is spent, it no longer makes any additional impact. Green, spending half and investing half, well, that makes solid impact now, but also there's some that is growing and sustaining those programs a little bit. So maybe it's kind of like using some of Aunt Mildred's money and then putting some away to pay your increased property taxes or your increased maintenance costs. And then lastly, the blue, the teal, it doesn't make a whole lot of impact now, but it certainly makes the most impact over time. To illustrate that, look to the right side. It shows what happens after 30 years. So over the course of 30 years, one graph is how much money has how much money the organization has received and how much is remaining in the fund. So in the red, you've received $1 million, $0 remaining in the fund. Green, you've received back in distributions about $1.2 million. And there's $900,000 left in the fund. Blue, you've received back about $1.4 million. And there's still $1.8 million left in the fund. Again, these are not guaranteed returns, but these are based on historical averaged data. So all in all, from just $1 million gift, by being patient and calculated over a 30-year period, you've turned $1 million into $3.2 million, and it's still going to use. So I think that just helps visualize a common question. Should I spend this now? Should I invest this for future use? That totally depends on your needs as a nonprofit, but certainly, there are financial advantages to a long-term strategy. So you know your organization and what $1 million or $100,000 could do today. We won't tell you how to dictate your strategy. We're just going to show you exactly kind of what it means over the short term and the long term. I'm going to turn it back over to Jordan in just a second, but she's going to look at some current trends to answer, hey, why do endowments matter now? But to kick that concept off, some of you joined us in March, like I said, and might remember me sharing this quote from planned giving expert Brian Klontz. He said, by 2035, your goal as a nonprofit should be to have 20% of your operating budget coming from nonprofits. Coming from endowments. 20% of your operating budget coming from endowments by 2035. He says that for three reasons. One, planned giving is a great way to grow endowments. We're going to talk about that, and planned giving is happening right now. Two, related, sadly, as we look at the national donor demographics and how different generations express their generosity and loyalty, some of your most loyal donors might not be here in 10 years. Third, there is growing competition in the nonprofit space, and so funding will be more competitive. Jordan, with that, I will hand it off to you to continue to talk about why endowments matter in 2026.
Yeah, thank you. And so hitting on a lot of what we learned and absorbed from Brian Klontz here. I think a big question is why now? Why not start thinking about this in 2027 or 2028 when things calm down? And I think, there's some big indicators out there for why now is a good time. So, first and foremost, Colorado donors are giving more than ever. And that's both on the Colorado Gives platform, trend wise, and overall throughout the state. So, this is the time for nonprofits to build capacity, to invest in endowments. And then, of course, all of that comes with deepening your donor relationships for the future and to secure the future. So Colorado is a generous state and increases its generosity each year. So this is the time to take hold of that. Donor behavior. So again, something Tim touched on a bit, but total giving is increasing, and that's nationally. But the actual donor base, the pool of donors, is narrowing, and so that means that there's less donors that are giving larger amounts of gifts, which really profile-wise fits great with an endowment strategy. So engaging donors and building those long-term loyalty and relationships, now is the time to start that, so that when you look back in 10 years, just as Tim said, you've solidified and really honored those relationships of the donors that have been with you for a long time. This is also a strategic response, right? Endowments are a strategic response to both your nonprofit needs and to the economy. So building an endowment and a recurring giving program, let's not forget about those. They stabilize your revenue streams and allow donors to make a lasting impact beyond one gift. So not only is it a benefit to you, but also remember the value you're giving to these donors who want to make a greater impact. And then last, I feel good about 2026, and I hope you guys do too. It's not just another year. It's a moment to grow enduring support structures like endowments or recurring giving programs and deepen your engagement year round. People want to hear from nonprofits. They want to hear good, they want to hear solutions, and you have them. And meet that rising community needs, besides the fact that there's federal funding gaps and a lot of craziness in the world. And so now feels like the time to start having that conversation and start exposing your donors to the possibility of endowments and other investment programs. All right. And we thought it would be really fun now to just take a quick poll with everybody that has joined us today. We want to know, what is your biggest barrier to starting an endowment? And these are anonymous answers. We'll just kind of see the total. So when you have a sec, go ahead and take that poll. So we've got raising initial capital, taking money away from annual operating, board agreement, always a challenge. We just wanted to take a pulse and see what you guys are thinking about. Awesome. So it looks like about 45% of you raising the initial capital, 28 to 30% taking money away from annual operating, 11% getting my board to agree, which we'll address today. And then having long-term vision and a case for an endowment, 18%. So really across the board, some needs that we can help meet hopefully today or get you right on the right path to. Awesome. Thanks, Katie. I guess I can end the poll. There we go. Let's see what those final results are. Awesome. Thank you, guys. That gives us some good guidance for today, for how we follow up with you, and for what resources we can provide, not just our endowment partners, but all Colorado nonprofits. All right, and then I mentioned this at the top, but just wanted to remind you guys again that in our first webinar last year, March 2025, we went into the nitty gritty. So we talked in great detail about endowments. So if this feels like an overview that you're familiar with, you might want to go back and check that other webinar out. Or you can just chat with us. Feel free to schedule a call. But here it is in the slide deck for you. And then now I'd love to pass it back to Tim because we're going to talk about 3 partner scenarios that hopefully will inspire and illustrate why endowments can be a great part of your strategy.
Jordan, I like this format, passing it back and forth because while you were talking, I got to kind of go through the chat and read a little bit. Colorado's so great, man. Like, some people are excited that winter's over, and some people are like, I want more snow. Like, it's just great. It's a place for everyone. And then I started to get a little distracted daydreaming about going to Disney World or Antarctica. So those 2 trips will be a little different, by the way, Disney World or Antarctica. So a lot of great things going on. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, as Jordan said, let's look at a few different scenarios on how nonprofits gained capital to start an endowment. That was the number one answer, right? Hey, we want to gain that initial capital. These are all based on real stories. We've changed the names of the organizations and we've approximated the amounts, but they're all actual ways that nonprofits get funds off of the ground. So I'm not usually a slide reader. I read the first one. I'll read a couple of these just to give us the good synopsis, and then we'll summarize. Sally gave $20,000 to her favorite dog rescue nonprofit almost every year. To help fund veterinarian services. If I'm going to come up with a scenario, I should use words that I can pronounce. Veterinarian services. While the development team was very grateful for all of these gifts, Sally was aging and they worried about what would happen when she was no longer around to make generous donations. So they met with Sally and invited her to consider putting the organization in her will, specifically to fund an endowment. When Sally passed away, she left approximately $500,000 to the nonprofit to set up a named fund to support her favorite program. With a 4% distribution, the nonprofit now receives $20,000 and growing every year, each and every year, continuing Sally's legacy and impact. All right, let's look at some key takeaways from this. The endowment, the really cool concept here is the endowment made Sally's annual gift continue, even when she was gone, because it continues to grow, it continues to make distributions. So if we're worried about losing some of our most loyal donors, this is a great option to make sure that their impact continues. But we have to ask them. Sally kept giving annually in her lifetime because it cost her nothing at the time that she put the nonprofit in her will. She wrote them in there, and so she was still able to continue to give every year. She got to choose her favorite program to support. That's a theme. Now, what I will say is we want the nonprofit to also make sure that aligns with what they're going to be doing long term. If she had said, I want to leave money so that every dog has a leash every single year. Yeah, we all need a salad. We sure do. If she said, I want every dog to have a leash every year, and that's what my endowment fund is for, and they're like, yo, we don't even do leashes, then that's probably not the best choice. But if it's a core program that you're going to continue for a long time, absolutely, it often makes sense to partner with what a donor really loves. And then the revenue towards the program, it's predictable. It actually requires very minimal work by the nonprofit staff. I think they probably still steward and they still thank and send some information to Sally's family from time to time, but it actually has this is very, very minimal work to have $20,000 and growing come to your organization each year. We're going to be using, I'm seeing some good chats. One of the takeaways to spoiler is this could be for you could cut off a zero from this. You can add a zero to these numbers. The minimum to open an endowment is $50,000. So maybe Sally gives $2,000 a year and leaves $50,000 in her will. The one thing I will say, because I thought I just saw a chat pop up that said that these are pretty big numbers. The one thing I will say that we mentioned last March is the average annual gift to an organization by a donor is somewhere in that $100 $110, $120 range. So somewhere in that. Jordan maybe could even tell you what the average gift on Colorado Gives Day, coloradogives.org, is. The average bequest gift, the average planned gift when someone leaves you in their will is $65,000. So, yeah, these are big numbers, especially if Sally only gives $2,000 a year or less. But the average gift that someone writes to a nonprofit in their will is $65,000. That is definitely enough to start an endowment. So not all of them will be that big, but some of them will be bigger. Anyway, those are the key takeaways. Sorry to go on a tangent based on some questions that I thought I saw popped up. Let's go to scenario number 2. Carl and Helen loved the local museum and wanted to make sure their transportation exhibits continued to operate and had permanent funding. Instead of continuing to give $5,000 each year, they chose to create an endowment for $100,000 that they actually set up in their lifetime, and they named it after their family to help ensure that the future of the museum would continue on. The museum leveraged Colorado Gives Foundation's 10% matching grant, and they were able to raise additional funds on coloradogives.org for the new endowment, bringing the fund value up to nearly $150,000, which creates $6,000 in annual revenue each year. Because the fund is named after the donors, Carl and Helen actually have decided to leave money in their will to the fund, and their family has also made gifts to the fund in their honor. That's also based on a true story here. So let's look at some key takeaways from this one. Created a permanent endowment, again, for the program that the donors loved. That's a theme. They actually chose to name the fund after their family. Some donors do not want to do that at all. Some donors, that's very appealing. So kind of knowing who they are. They can also name it after a loved one. I remember doing some endowed scholarship fundraising, and a lot of people would name funds after their a mentor or a parent or sometimes their favorite professor, whatever it was. So naming funds can, not always, but can be really neat and appealing. They used coloradogives.org to raise additional dollars for the effort. Jordan is going to talk a little bit about that as well. Then, because they felt an affinity and a connection to this fund, they put it in their will. The nonprofit was able to engage the donors community and even the next generation because they have a fund named after their parents. So the next generation was excited about that. And then this one, like the first one and like the next one, used Colorado Gives Foundation's matching grants, the 10% matching grant. So when they started a fund for $100,000, Colorado Gives Foundation put $10,000 of their grant dollars into the fund as well. I'll come back to that in case that is particularly interesting.
Yeah, we had some chats about that, so we can definitely talk a little bit more about benefits of opening a fund at a community foundation versus with a financial institution. That's a good
Perfect.
Question.
Great. We'll be super. I have answers for those already. So let's get to those. Scenario 3. This is a really unique one that doesn't even involve a donor at first. But I think it's an important one because about 10-15% of you talked about how difficult it is for board buy-in. Mountain Park Health Clinic realized the power of endowments and the solid investment returns, so they wanted to establish a fund as a part of their overall resources and their overall portfolio and investments. Without raising any new dollars, they did a few things. They evaluated their current cash reserves and felt good about those. 2, they implemented a windfall policy. 3, they found an investment partner to add matching grant dollars. And now, anytime the organization ends the year in the black, has extra dollars at the end of the year, which I know is not always the case in the nonprofit world. But when they end the year in the black and they possess at least 3 months of cash reserves on hand, they will roll money into their endowment, which then in turn increases distributions the following year. The endowment is for general operating, and some of the board members feel so tied to and proud of the fund that they have listed it in their own wills. All right, a couple more lessons learned from this one, and then we'll talk a little bit more about board buy-in. But hey, this is a visionary board. If this sounds like your board, awesome, congratulations. But they saw the need to invest in the future. They took existing assets, identified objectives. Their objectives were, hey, we want some higher returns and we want some predictable revenue. That's really great for an endowment. If they wanted a little bit more flexibility, I would advise maybe a different route. So, but they felt good with their cash reserves. They secured grant funding again. They outsourced the responsibilities. That's huge. So they're not adding more to their staff. They're actually they're alleviating the work from their staff. And then it resulted in new planned gifts from the fund. Okay, so those are the three scenarios. Maybe let's take a step back and see what some of them have in common with some lessons learned. The first, a lot of the donors cared about a lasting impact for their favorite program. And an endowment, you're helping them do that. You're actually, in many ways, giving them a gift by providing this option that they can see their favorite program continue on. The second is none of these, I think, none of these, they set their visionary goal was met right away. They didn't have the full amount funded when they established the endowment. Instead, planned giving, digital fundraising, continued annual gifts, all helped grow the fund beyond the initial investment. The other one, all of these obviously are ones that we've partnered with. You don't have to do this all yourself. Find a partner that can help take on fiduciary responsibilities and even help you fundraise. Like we mentioned, using coloradogives.org is a great way to help you fundraise. And then I mentioned this in two stories, but actually all three of the stories, grant funding from Colorado Gives Foundation was leveraged to amplify the donor's impact. We intentionally picked stories that were from smaller, medium-sized, and large organizations. So truly, nonprofits of all sizes can grow and establish endowed funds. So those are some of the stories. I hope that they are relatable. Or at least might inspire some creative thinking of, I never really thought about, should we create an endowment based on assets that we already have? I never really thought about, should maybe we don't have the donor that can do it today, but we might have the donor that could do this in his or her will. So we're going to go look at some specific tactics that you could use to maybe follow similar approaches in these stories. And those 4 tactics on the next slide here look at planned giving's best practices for hopefully a result like story 1, how to engage major donors for like story 2 for more immediate impact, how to approach your board like in story 3, and then also how you can supplement some of this with digital fundraising, which was also a part of story 2. So we're through the stories. Let's keep trucking along. I saw there's some questions, but we'll get to those in a little bit. Let's push ahead like we're approaching Eisenhower Tunnel on a powder day. So keep trucking along here. All right. Why planned giving and endowments go together? This is a really neat quote from benefactor. Because an endowment gift is invested for the long term, it can serve as a lasting tribute, extending the donor's values to future generations. This is the important part. Endowment gifts are often a donor's final and largest commitment to the organization that they value most. Really awesome. Again, I hope you see this as an opportunity for them to make an impact for you, but you to give them a gift as well. So here are some of the best ways to either launch or enhance your planned giving program, which is, as we've said, one of the most effective ways to build an endowment and to secure a sustainable future. If you're with us last March, we definitely discussed some of these, so they might look familiar. But again, we got the feedback that these were pretty manageable steps, and so we wanted to share them, at least a lot of them again. When creating planned giving invitations, materials, when you're suggesting to your donors that they can put you in their will, Number one, use social norms. People give when they see others like them also giving. Herd mentality is very powerful. There's some really great research out of the UK that showed that actually when you use herd mentality, donors are 3 times more likely to give, especially in their will. There's a study out of the UK that we looked at from that. So if you have board members that you want to consider putting you in your will, share stories about other board members who might have. Volunteers, oh my gosh, volunteers is a great group for planned giving. Volunteers, share stories about other volunteers. Longtime donors, longtime donors. Describe even what they chose to do. I remember, and this is a real story as well. I remember doing planned giving for a human service organization here for a number of years. And I talked to one donor and he said, Tim, here's what we're doing. We have 3 kids, but we're dividing our estate into 4 parts. So each kid gets a fourth. And then that last fourth, we are giving to our 3 favorite charities. And I was like, can I retell this story? And he's like, sure. Anytime I met somebody with 2 kids, 3 kids, however, I was like, you know what Paul's doing? He's dividing his estate not by 3 parts, but by 4 parts. And then he's picking his favorite. And like whether I used his real name or not, man, I've told that one story. It's so cool. And so anytime there's somebody that kind of reminded me of him, I would just be like, yeah, this is something that you might consider because someone like you also has done that. Describe what they do, because that will not only help inspire creativity, but set some social norms. Number 2, use easy human language. Please say, would you consider a gift in your will? Instead of, would you consider a bequest in your estate plan, right? That sounds like Scottish nobility would say that. I don't know, not regular people. What I always like to tell, the story I like to tell is the second best professor I ever had was really smart and used big words. But the first best professor I ever had was really smart, and he used words that I could understand. So that's, I think, be that second guy, be the best professor. Use words that we all can understand. This is a great circular moment. Endowments really matter. If you have an endowment, mention it. Like we said, it signals the permanence of your organization and the long-term impact for the donor. Again, maybe the donor will list you next to his or her 3 kids and put you in their final wishes just to leave the lights on a little longer. But more likely, they want to give you a gift that lasts, and endowments signal that. So you can see this is kind of circular. Number 4 on the next slide, keep it simple. Right? 90% of planned gifts are bequests or beneficiary designations. I just told you not to use bequests, and then I used it. I'm just using it with you. It can be an internal word, not external. That means 90% of planned gifts are when somebody writes you in their will and says, please give my favorite nonprofit X number of dollars or Y% of my assets. Or maybe they will say, please list my favorite nonprofit as the beneficiary of my life insurance policy. For any of those scenarios, if you can receive a check, then you can invite donors to add you into your will. You don't need to have any fancy way of saying, oh, well, we're in the charitable gift annuity market. We do charitable remainder trusts. 90% of planned giving is if you can receive a check, you can invite donors to put you in their will. The last one, this is from, I mentioned him earlier, Brian Klontz has a saying that says, take up shelf space. Because there is a moment that happens in a donor's life, maybe 2, 3, 5, 6 times, and that's when they update their will. And that's when we want them to be thinking about you. And one of those 5 times in their life. So how will they think about you? Add planned giving to your emails. Include it in your volunteer orientation packets or even your board welcome packets. Update your website. I even like putting stickers on name tags at events to mark legacy partners. Please get their permission before you do this. But even if it just causes people to say, wait, why do you have a heart on your name tag? At least they know that your organization will accept their planned gift. A lot of donors don't even know that you will do that. Here's a good example. I don't know if anyone from Colorado Public Radio is on here, but if you were to say, hey, you know what? I want to donate my car to a nonprofit. Who would you think of? I think of Colorado Public Radio because they're the ones that are asking for your car. So be the organization that lets your donors know that you would absolutely be honored if they put you in their will. All right. As we said, keep learning. We have some another great webinar coming up in June where we're going to partner with Colorado Planned Giving Roundtable. This is totally a free webinar, and they are a great resource when it comes to planned giving. So we hope you'll join us for that.
Those will be invites sent out at a later time. So we'll be inviting everybody that's an admin on coloradogives.org, and we hope to see you there.
Yeah.
Let's keep on going.
Let's do, I have just 2 more slides and then I'll turn it over to Jordan, and I think we'll have time for questions. So the only downside to planned giving is that it takes time, right? It takes time. The gifts are large. I mentioned the average size of a bequest gift. Sorry, I used the word again. Average size of a gift left in somebody's will is $65,000. So big gifts when people write you in their will. But the only downside, for obvious reasons, it will sometimes take many years for that gift to come to you. So let's talk about a more immediate approach that is engaging major donors now. And I will say, only if this fits into your strategic vision and plan. I wouldn't try to engage your top donors to help you create an endowment if you also are trying to get them to build you a new building the same month, right? So let's think a little bit about, you have to prioritize and think about your strategic priorities. But if this does fit into those, here are some tactics that you might take to approach major donors. When looking at the right donors, that might help you with an endowment, I try to look at the center of this Venn diagram. So who are the donors that make regular, moderate, or major gifts? Who are the donors that love a program that I actually would like to have endowed? Not the every dog gets a leash, but hey, every dog needs veterinary services. So programs that you say, this will be around a long time, and I have a donor who loves this program. Third is maybe they have some higher capacity than where they're currently giving, or you think that there is a legacy moment that could be an opportune time to engage them. Wealth screening tools can absolutely help with this, but also a legacy moment can be, hey, their board term is ending. Hey, they had a great experience. They just sold a business. It could be they're done paid for their kids to go to college. I mean, geez, 1 year of your kid in college, that you could start an endowment for that. Here's an example. I might say, Katie. Hey, Katie. Katie gives $2,000 a year. This is very similar to the example that we gave earlier. Katie gives $2,000 a year to our affordable housing program. I know that program will be around indefinitely. She loves that program. And Katie's about to go off of our board after being board chair for a few years. Katie, instead of writing a check every year to this, would you consider establishing an endowed fund with us so that you could cement a lasting impact to your favorite program? Here's what it would look like. And to make it easy, Katie, we found a community foundation, the Colorado Gives Foundation, that will add 10% to whatever you give. We also can name the fund after you, or maybe after your mom. I guess we'll name it after your dog if you want. No, I don't know about that. And by the way, if you want to give stock or you want to do a distribution from your IRA, you want to use your donor advice fund, there's a number of different ways we can do that. So our Katie here would say yes in a heartbeat because that's just who she is. If your Katie says, or if your donor says, no, that's probably too much, I can't jump from $2,000 to $50,000. Oh, great. Thanks, Katie. Katie said, of course. But if your donor says, I don't have the capital, I don't have the money to jump from a $2,000 gift to a $50,000 gift. Totally get that. You could say, hey, we get that that might be a stretch right now. If you'd like, the idea though of creating a lasting impact, would you at least consider thinking about naming us in your will? And we could walk you through how we could do all of these same things as I just described without it costing you anything today. So those are the tactics I think to help that you can modify for your own donors and programs and fit those and find that sweet spot there of what donor might help you start an endowment now. All right, my last one. We really wanted to share a board buy-in story because no matter when and how you want to start an endowment, you probably will need approval and support from your board. In fact, I think it was 12% of you that said this was your number one barrier to establishing an endowment was board buy-in. So, want to go through a few concepts with you. I've met with many boards who are exploring an endowment, and the primary concern, I'm going to address it right now, primary concern that most of them have is, well, we don't want to lock money away. If we do an endowment, it's hard to access that money later, and we just don't know what the future holds. We don't know what we'll need. I think there are two big reasons why a lot of boards think this way, and this is great. Disclaimer, I think volunteer board members for nonprofits are huge heroes in our community. They're giving back to you in so many ways. So I'm going to poke at some some of their thinking at times, but like they are absolute heroes, and this is kind of to help you bring them along. A lot of times, a termed leader, a temporary leader, who might just be serving for a few years, could correlate success with their own term. So they might say, I really want to help grow these programs while I'm on this board. But it's important to sometimes help board members think about, hey, we know that that you want to help us right now. We also want to be thinking about 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, because sometimes a long-term approach really pays off. So helping a board member kind of shift to what can we do now and what can we do later? The second interesting observation I've had about many board members is, I'm laughing again because, like I said, they're fantastic. But there's sometimes a discrepancy between how they operate their own personal finances and how they believe you as a nonprofit should operate your finances. They might say, hey, I don't want to lock money away, but if they have an IRA or a 401k themselves, they do lock money away. So I've encountered a lot of board members who think that nonprofits should operate their finances by ending every year at zero. They can't end the red, otherwise they'll be losing money, and that's bad practice. You can't end the black because that's resources that could have been used to serve people. So this requires helping board members by saying, I know you want to help us protect ourselves. I know you want to make impact now, which is why an endowment is just one piece of our investment strategy. But also, you know, this means sometimes investing resources into a sustainable future as well. So 3 categories just to help them speak their language. 1, endowments have really long-term benefits in their investment returns. They're attractive to planned giving donors. They even signal, as we talked about earlier, that other funders and foundations might be more likely to commit and invest in you all because you're dedicated to the long haul. 2, they make an immediate impact as well. Like I said, there's sometimes some, not only the annual distributions, but there is grant funding that comes from some of your partners as well. And lastly, reminding them that an endowment actually will take work away from you as a staff when you outsource it to the right partner, and it's still providing funding for future boards and future leadership to use, but with appropriate guardrails. So board members are so awesome. They're so great. They're giving you their time and expertise. They're trying to look out for you and offer you a unique perspective. So yes, you sometimes have to kind of speak their language, but truly help, truly utilize them to help you set up for immediate and future success. Okay, I am going to jump. I'm going to let Jordan jump to this. I might try to answer a few questions in the chat while she does.
Yeah, I've been watching the chat. Thank you guys. These are awesome questions. And like I said, if we can't get to them all, we will certainly be following up with you guys to make sure to answer those for you. So really, really great content up to this point, and really I'm jumping in here to just remind you all that this type of fundraising for endowments, for capital campaigns, for galas, for events, it's happening on coloradogives.org year round for free. So not just during the Colorado Gives Day time period, which of course we love. And so I wanted to give you an example of how easy it is. So this is an endowment fund specifically held at Colorado Gives Foundation. And so what they've done is we've created a fundraiser page underneath Colorado Gives Foundation to raise funds for their endowment. You can do the same thing for your endowment connected to your organization page. So as a quick refresher, it's as easy as going to your organization page, setting up a fundraiser underneath it, specific to your endowment. Of course, sharing that fundraiser page, which has a unique URL so people can land on it, absorb the content, see the goal for your fundraiser, and of course, donate. And then it becomes a channel for all types of donors to contribute to your endowment. Of course, we are talking about major donors and planned giving, but also maybe I, who only can give 200, 300 bucks, wants that money to live on in perpetuity. So the online fundraising piece of your endowment strategy can really open it up, spread awareness and news, and give people a way to facilitate any size of donation. All right. And so if you are an organization on coloradogives.org, which I hope everybody is, you are navigating to your organization page, and then you're going to campaigns, which is on the left-hand side navigation. And that's where you can create fundraiser pages, team pages, event pages, all for free, all unlimited, to represent endowment campaigns or other things that are happening for your organization around the year. One thing that Tim touched on that I'll just highlight here as we're talking about online fundraising, a great mechanism for facilitating those more major gifts is our built-in external payments. And so what that means is by default, we have a ton of built-in payment methods. And since 2024, that now includes stocks, IRAs, donor advised funds, and wire gifts. And especially IRAs and donor advised funds are becoming a huge mechanism for major giving through the Colorado Gives platform. So let's empower our donors to not only contribute to our normal campaigns, but as you establish this endowment, include them in that fundraising. All right, and just a quick reminder here, this is built into the coloradogives.org system, meaning that a donor can choose when they're checking out to give via credit card, bank account, PayPal, Apple Pay, Google Pay, IRA, donor advised fund, wire, and then also stock. That's all under the same industry low fee structure. So if right now your website looks like a PayPal button and another button for this and another button for this and another page for this, you can condense all that to one simple checkout flow for your donors with these multiple payment methods built in through Colorado Gives. All right, that was it from me. Just wanted to remind you that digital fundraising isn't so much reinventing the wheel, but inserting it into what already is your priority, what already is your plan, what already is your calendar for 2026. So if you ever need any help with any of those strategies, I'm always here and able to meet with you to help work those out and empower you. All right, I'll turn it. Now we're going to talk just briefly about how you might message your endowment. Just to give you a little bit of inspiration as we start to answer questions here at the end. So again, why do donors give to an endowment? The legacy, the permanence. They want to feel the impact and certainty of their gift. They also, it's typically a particular type of donor. They want control or flexibility with how their money is applied. Oftentimes, as Tim mentioned, they want to be recognized, or they want that connection, that deep connection with the nonprofit, and they want emotional fulfillment. And so all of those are key triggers for you to start to understand how to talk about your endowment program to these different groups of people that care for your organization. This is a slide that represents some actual information that we gathered in 2025. So we were able to survey endowment donors and see what is the type of language that you like best. What do you respond to? What do you dislike? And so what we found was that this top line in quotes, support nonprofit mission, sustain nonprofit future, those words, support mission, sustain future, felt most powerful. So why donors loved it? It was concrete and clear. It was mission oriented, so it made them feel a part of the mission. It was emotionally meaningful. It wasn't exaggerated. So people thought a lot of the bequests and those types of words felt overdone, whereas the simple human language feels realistic and trustworthy. And then, of course, as we've been repeating, the immediate and lasting impact. So making sure that you know that their gift lives on and show the tangible immediate results as well as that long-term impact of them giving a certain amount. And then, of course, the terms that donors did not like related to endowments. Forever fun, really disliked that. Infinite impact, impact that never ends, and in perpetuity. No one likes that word. And so this was real survey data from last year that we collected. And the reasons the donors said they didn't like some of those phrases, it was skeptical or unrealistic lingo. It was emotionally disconnected. I didn't see myself in that copy when you were talking about endowments. And then it was financially vague. What's the real effect? What's going to happen? And so as you're talking about yourself in all scenarios, but specifically for endowments, think about the donor's psychology and what they care about as you're writing your copy and reflecting your endowment program online and elsewhere. And then here we just want to show you some ways that you can talk about your endowment now if you have one. So you should be shouting from the rooftops, as Tim said. Don't put your endowment, on a shelf and forget about it. Make sure your donors are putting it on a shelf so that they don't forget about it. Continue to talk to them. So website and donation pages. Customize a donation page specific for endowment donations. Of course, email and social events and fundraisers. Tim mentioned just a little nice touch of a pin or something to signal that you're an endowment partner. Direct and mail and annual report campaigns. So as you're sharing this important information out, that's standard. You do it every year. Think about what it means to also add the credentials and the ask and the information around endowments in those messages. And then, of course, in your major donor conversations. So don't think that offering for donors to give to an endowment is just an ask. As Tim and I both said, it's a value add for a donor who's interested in giving at that level. All right, and here just to wrap up for today, just some examples of how you, as a different nonprofit organization category, might talk about endowments. So youth and education, your gift creates a legacy of learning, ensuring students have the programs and resources they need for decades. Health and wellness, your contribution to our endowment helps sustain vital health programs, so program specific. Similarly, if we were to talk to a science and research or environmental organization, they more diligently might send out updates or newsletters. And so your endowment gift fuels groundbreaking research for decades, ensuring discoveries continue and benefit our community for future generations. I think they nailed it, right? That's what I want to hear from an environmental organization when I give to their endowment fund. And so these are hopefully just some some short snippets to inspire and to show that no matter what type of category or size of organization you are, you can leverage an endowment for current supporters and for current impact, as far as future and also for future supporters and future impact. Um, let's head on here. And then we have one more poll for you, again, just to really understand our audience and what you guys are working with. So, what endowment resources, as we're going through this webinar, do you think you would need to get going? What would be helpful to get you off the ground, endowment wise? Are you feeling good? You're like, I'm ready to talk to Tim. I'm ready to talk to whomever, my financial place. Maybe you're thinking about taking baby steps and using coloradogives.org to fundraise a bit, dip your toe in around endowments. Let's see how it's going. Okay. Oh, Tim. 25% say they're ready for an endowment assessment. Awesome. Planned giving materials to help donors consider supporting endowments. We got 70% of people needing that. Awesome. And then about 33%, how to sell endowments to my board. So just more robust talking points to help them. I love it. Let's go ahead and end this poll. Thank you all. And let's share the results for a quick peek here. Now, again, this is directly going to influence how we're helping you, the people on this webinar, and hopefully our current partners, future partners, everybody we're coming into contact with. So this is great, great information. Thank you for participating. All right, now let's do some questions. And if for any chance your questions are a little bit more complex, we will follow up with you to spend some time with you one-on-one to help make sure you feel comfortable.
Okay. First question is, what are the tax implications of setting up an endowment for a nonprofit? Tax deductible? No tax since for a nonprofit? I'm asking about both sides, the nonprofit side and from the donor side. Is the endowment a separate entity?
Good question. I always answer this by saying I am not smart enough nor qualified to give tax advice. Some people are smart enough but not qualified. Others are qualified but not smart enough. I'm neither. I don't give tax advice. But what I will say is we're a 501c3. A lot of other non-community foundations or other partners that you would work for would be a 501c3. If you are a 501c3 as well, then that makes things very simple. Donors can give gifts directly to you. This is how most endowments start and work is donors make the gifts to you. I had another question that I sort of answered about this in the chat. Donors make a gift to you, you collect those, then establish a fund with a partner. All of those gifts would be tax deductible gifts, as far as I can see, with the vagueness that I don't give tax advice. Also, what Jordan just described on coloradogives.org, again, all of those gifts that go through coloradogives.org are as well. So I won't go into too many details, but yes, great question about what's tax deductible. But usually for what you're doing, for our status, usually that is the case, although I don't give tax advice. It seems like I gave a lot for not giving any.
Next question is, what is the benefit of opening an endowment with a community foundation versus a financial institution?
Yep, I'll totally tell you this piece. A community foundation and a private or a private firm, the Fidelities, the Charles Schwabs, Morgan Stanleys, all of us are going to do really great investment management. In fact, we partner with a lot of them to help grow our funds and your funds and our donor advised funds. So we're leveraging world-class expert investment management. So everyone's going to do that well. Here are the big differences. Community foundations. Well, I'm going to start with the firms. Usually, those firms can offer some really good low overall fees. They're also really great options. If we had the question earlier of, hey, do you guys do cash reserves? Do you guys do more flexible funds? Of course, yes, we do. Those firms are might even be more beneficial for cash reserves. Putting monies with your local bank or with a Fidelity or whatever could be really great. So look into that and what their fee structures are, because if you want some more flexibility and you don't have some of these guidelines that you're looking for, they could be beneficial. Why a community foundation is really beneficial is I can think of three big ways. One, some of them, like us, will help you raise money for your fund. Fidelity's not doing that. Another is some of them, like us, will add matching grant dollars into your fund. Again, Fidelity's not doing that. They're great. I hope there's like a board member who works for Fidelity and they could be like, "Hey, we're awesome, and you are awesome. We like you." Matching grants, helping you raise money, or one, the other two. But then the last one is, again, the pros and cons to a permanent endowment are that this is designed for the long term. And one day there will be another group of leaders, board members, CEOs, executive directors, CFOs around the table making decisions. And a community foundation can really help protect intent of what the fund is supposed to be. I would say probably even better than a private firm. So their benefit, great fees, lowest fees. We actually also have very competitive fees as well, but our benefits are the grant funding, the continuity, and the fundraising support.
Next question. If we have a goal for our endowment, is it an advantage to put a timeline on the endowment campaign, or should we leave it open-ended? Do you
Man,
count planned gifts that are designated to the endowment but not yet received toward the endowment goal?
I saw this question in the chat and I was like, I could spend 30 minutes on this one. This is a great one. In fact, thanks for answering that. There's another one that I started to answer as well in the chat that you might get to soon. Okay, if you have an endowment goal, there's a lot of ways to approach this. Some organizations, depending on the size of the endowment and depending on how complex and how big of a lift it is, sometimes they want to hire people to do feasibility studies to see if what they're able to do. I mean, if we're talking about over $1 million, it might be worth doing that. I'm just kind of speculating at this point. Or if you think, hey, we're going to need to engage more than a handful of donors, it might be worth doing that. And then engaging some consultants or some experts to help with a feasibility study. The benefit of that is then they're pretty good at projecting goals for you. They're like, hey, we've polled your donors and we've refined your case studies. And yeah, you're ready for an endowment campaign. And here's what we think your range would be. Most of them pride themselves that they hit their goals because they do some good research. So yes, in a lot of ways, you could engage someone for a feasibility study if it's a big lift. You could do that. The other question about, do you add planned giving into your, yeah, you also can do this. In fact, the big universities, they do this all the time. When they will say, hey, we're doing a campaign, they absolutely count those. I think I'll reverse the question a little bit and say, like, what's kind of the objective? Because if the objective is, hey, we want to create an endowment to offset this program, and this program costs $10,000 a year, then you're going to say, okay, I am going to need $250,000 endowment. In that case, it might not make sense to count those planned gifts, because if the money's not in the fund making distributions back to you, then so I guess where I'll reverse the question is kind of, what's the goal? Is it to offset a program? Is it to have a specific amount in distributions, or is it just to build some donor momentum? And because I could see you going either way on counting those planned gifts. But yes, a lot of organizations do, especially like universities. They do it often. I didn't talk for 30 minutes like I said I would on that one. So
Good job.
everyone is better for it.
What is the best strategy for balancing endowment fundraising alongside an annual fund and an upcoming capital campaign without overwhelming donors?
This is the one I started to type in, and so we'll just answer it here. Yeah, here's the thing. There are some really great ways where endowment fundraising can work with um, campaign fundraising, can work with annual fundraising, um, but not. I shouldn't say this with 100% all the time certainty, but usually not at the exact same time. So here's some interesting thoughts. One, if you are on the heels of a capital campaign, we've heard stories of nonprofits who go to a donor 2 or 3 years after they've built a building, and the donor has a room named after them. And that's where I keep going back to my veterinarian example, but let's say that's where you provide veterinarian services. And in this room that's named after Jordan Brown. Well, I could go back to Jordan and say, Jordan has a very cute dog, by the way. I could go back to Jordan and say, hey, this room's named after you, and we are doing some amazing work in this room thanks to you. Would you help us? Would you consider helping us ensure that the work continues here forever? I mean, the building's here. Now we just got to make sure that these services are paid for and they're always available to whoever needs them. Here's what it would take. Here's what it would take to offset this, or even a part of it, or even going back to that scenario that we talked about oh, if that's too much now, would you consider it in your will? But in what I'm describing, I'm not asking Jordan um, to name the room while we're building the building and endow the program at the same time. I'm not saying that's impossible, but I'm actually saying that the endowment piece could be a good stewardship piece after your campaign. So years down the road, you're like, hey, look at the great work we're doing it here. And you're saying millions of thank yous because your donors deserve millions of thank yous. And you're sharing them the impact that their gift has made. And then you could use an endowment as, now let's ensure that your investment continues on forever. So, sorry, I'm trying not to use the word forever. But so does that make sense? So I actually look at endowments sometimes as they're good at as maybe a stewardship after a campaign. So if you built a building 5 years ago, maybe it's a good time to think about it. If you're trying to raise money for the building today, let's yeah, that's a really good question. We don't want the donors to be overwhelmed. Also, what Jordan was talking about, this I'll be very quick on this, with annual fund. Yeah, a lot of nonprofits know December we need money for our annual operating. Don't put then if you don't have to then advertise fundraising for your endowment in December. The thing that we would hate to see the most is a donor who is excited about your endowment gives you $20,000, but last year they gave you $20,000 for your annual operating, and now you're like, oh no, I needed that money for right now. Whereas we could strategize with you to say, hey, can you ask him for that? But then start to seed this idea of an endowment, and maybe you could spread out their gifts throughout the year a little bit more, or just invite them with some transparency on giving them some options, but suggesting, hey, we still really rely on your annual gift. Would you consider something above that to help us get this endowment off the ground? So, great question. I don't know if any of that was practical for you or not. Oh, good, there's a heart. That maybe it was
No,
somewhat useful.
that was great. And I think it goes along with the messaging and also who you're talking to. So maybe there are a couple of endowment potential donors that you talk to in December. That's not going to be the mass, bulk emails that you're sending. That's going to be a personal email, a call set up, exactly what Tim is saying. So I think it's identifying the right people throughout the year to talk to and when. So gosh, this has been awesome. We are at the 10:30 mark,
Yep.
and I know we have a ton more questions that we can definitely follow up on. Um, Tim, I'll let you call us out today. Just want to thank you and everybody for all of the great content and engagement.